On the 22nd of July, 2025, the music world fell silent. Ozzy Osbourne, the man who had once been hailed as the Prince of Darkness, passed away at the age of 76. For some, he was a rock god, the voice of Black Sabbath, the father of heavy metal. For others, he was a walking scandal, a man defined by chaos, drugs, and shocking stunts that blurred the line between performance and madness. But the truth of Ozzy Osbourne's life was far more complicated. His story was not only one of fame and fortune, but also one of addiction, near-death experiences, broken families, and a constant battle between genius and destruction. From biting the head off a bat on stage, to collapsing under the weight of years of drug abuse, to struggling with Parkinson's disease in his final decade, Ozzy's life was never ordinary. And in death, the world is forced to confront a haunting question. Was Ozzy Osbourne a legend to be celebrated, or a cautionary tale about what happens when brilliance is consumed by darkness? This is the tragedy of Ozzy Osbourne, the rise, the fall, and the broken legacy left behind. Ozzy Osbourne's story began far from the glamour of Hollywood. Born John Michael Osbourne in Birmingham, England on the 3rd of December 1948, he grew up in Aston, a working-class neighborhood scarred by poverty and industrial decay. His father was a toolmaker, his mother a factory worker, and Ozzy often recalled the constant struggle just to get by. At school, he was ridiculed for his dyslexia, and he left formal education with little hope for the future. By his late teens, he had already been arrested for petty crimes and spent time in jail for burglary. His future seemed destined for obscurity or worse. But music became his salvation. Inspired by the Beatles, Ozzy believed he might find his escape through rock and roll. In 1968, he joined forces with guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Skeezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward to form a band that would change music forever, Black Sabbath. What began as a blues rock experiment quickly transformed into something darker, heavier, and unlike anything listeners had heard before. Their self-titled debut album, Black Sabbath, released in 1970, shocked the world! With eerie riffs, ominous lyrics, and Ozzy's haunting voice, the band created what many consider the birth of heavy metal. Songs like Paranoid and Iron Man cemented their place in history, and Ozzy's distinctive voice made him the face of an entire movement. Yet, even as Black Sabbath rose to fame, cracks began to form. Behind the success, Ozzy was already drowning in alcohol and drugs, living the very chaos that would become both his fuel and his downfall. Still, in those early years, he was not just a singer, he was a prophet of darkness, a man channeling the fears and frustrations of a generation into music that was as terrifying as it was groundbreaking. From the factories of Birmingham to the stages of the world, Ozzy Osbourne had risen from nothing to become the unlikely voice of rebellion. But as his star burned brighter, so too did the demons within him. By the late 1972, Black Sabbath was imploding under the weight of drugs, egos, and exhaustion. For Ozzy Osbourne, the downward spiral was even more dramatic. His dependence on alcohol and cocaine had become unmanageable, and in 1979, he was fired from the very band he had helped to create. To many, it looked like the end of the road. But in true Ozzy fashion, it was just the beginning of another chaotic chapter. With the support of Sharon Arden, who would later become his wife and the most important force in his career, Ozzy launched a solo career that shocked critics and thrilled fans. In 1980, he released Blizzard of Oz, featuring the hits Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. The album was a smash success, proving that Ozzy wasn't just the frontman of Black Sabbath, he was a star in his own right. With guitarist Randy Rhoads at his side, Ozzy became the face of a new generation of heavy metal. But success was never simple for him. Alongside the music came the scandals that would define his public persona. In 1982, during a concert in Des Moines, Iowa, a fan threw a live bat onto the stage. Thinking it was a rubber toy, Ozzy picked it up and bit off its head. The stunt became one of the most infamous moments in rock history, cementing his reputation as the Prince of Darkness. He later admitted he had no idea it was real, but the damage and the legend was done. The chaos didn't stop there. His drug use was notorious. He once snorted a line of ants on tour, fought with police, and nearly destroyed his marriage in drunken rages. In 1989, in a shocking incident, Ozzy was arrested for attempting to strangle Sharon while blackout drunk. She chose not to press charges, and instead the couple pushed forward together in uneasy partnership of love, business, and survival. Still, his solo career soared. Albums like Diary of a Madman and No More Tears kept him at the top of the charts, while his stage shows became legendary for their theatrical excess. Fans couldn't look away. To them, Ozzy wasn't just a singer, he was chaos incarnate, a man who lived out the madness that others only sang about. But beneath the theatrics, the toll was heavy. Friends and fellow musicians fell to addiction, and Ozzy himself seemed to teeter on the edge of self-destruction. Yet somehow, through all the scandals, arrests, overdoses, and near-death experiences, he survived. If anything, each scandal only added to the mythology. By the end of the 1982nd, Ozzy Osbourne had achieved what few thought possible. He had risen from the ashes of Black Sabbath, turned chaos into legend, and established himself as one of the most iconic and most controversial figures in rock history. But the next chapter would drag not only him, but also his entire family into the spotlight and into a new kind of madness. If Sharon Osbourne had saved Ozzy's career in the 1982nd, she would reinvent his public image in the 2002nd. Their marriage had always been a volatile mix of devotion and destruction. She was his manager, his partner, and often his rescuer. Despite Ozzy's substance abuse and violent outbursts, Sharon stood by him, insisting that behind the chaos was a man worth saving. That gamble paid off when MTV approached the family with an idea that would change television forever. A reality show centered not on polished celebrities, but on the chaotic, unfiltered life of the Osbournes themselves. In 2002, the Osbournes premiered, and overnight, the aging Prince of Darkness became a household name for an entirely new generation. Viewers were fascinated by the bizarre blend of profanity, dysfunction, and love within the Osbourne household. Ozzy, often mumbling, shuffling, and visibly struggling with decades of drug and alcohol damage, was both tragic and endearing. Sharon was the fierce matriarch, while their children, Jack and Kelly, became reluctant celebrities themselves. The show was a ratings juggernaut. It won an Emmy Award, redefined reality television, and made the Osbournes one of the most famous families in the world. But it also came at a cost. The raw exposure revealed the toll that years of excess had taken on Ozzy. Instead of the untouchable Prince of Darkness, audiences now saw a broken man dependent on medication shuffling through a house of chaos. Sharon later admitted that the show nearly destroyed their family. Jack and Kelly struggled with their own addictions and identity crises under the glare of the spotlight. Ozzy, meanwhile, became almost a caricature of himself, the line between legend and spectacle blurring beyond repair. And yet, for all its dysfunction, the Osbournes left a lasting cultural mark. It opened the door for celebrity reality shows long before the Kardashians would dominate pop culture. But for Ozzy himself, it was another tragedy in disguise. Fame that once came from groundbreaking music now came from exposing his fragility, his addictions, and his broken family life to the world. The Prince of Darkness had become reality television's reluctant clown, and the weight of that transformation would haunt him in the years to come. By the late 2010, the chaos that had once fueled Ozzy Osbourne's legend began to take its toll in ways even he could not outrun. Decades of alcohol abuse, drug addiction, and endless touring had left his body battered. In 2019, a series of health crises began to unravel the myth of the indestructible Prince of Darkness. It started with a fall at home that aggravated old injuries from a near-fatal ATV accident years earlier. Ozzy underwent multiple surgeries to repair his spine and neck, leaving him in constant pain. Not long after, he revealed that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological disorder that slowly robs its victims of movement and independence. For fans, the sight of Ozzy struggling to walk, his once powerful voice weakened, was heartbreaking. He was no longer the wild man biting bats and screaming anthems. He was a frail figure battling his own body. Tours were postponed, then canceled altogether. His long-awaited farewell tour became a tragic reminder that even legends must face mortality. Sharon stood by him through it all, publicly updating fans on his condition and insisting he would keep fighting. But Ozzy himself admitted in interviews that he was terrified. "I'm afraid of dying," he confessed. "I don't want to go yet." The candor was shocking for a man who had built his reputation on defying death, surviving overdoses, crashes, and madness. Each public appearance in his final years seemed to carry a sense of farewell. Whether accepting awards, appearing with Sharon, or giving interviews, Ozzy looked increasingly fragile. The larger-than-life figure who once embodied chaos and rebellion now embodied something else. The slow, painful collapse of a body that had given everything to rock and roll. On the 22nd of July, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne's battle came to an end. For many, it felt like the death of an era, the fall of one of rock's most outrageous icons, whose life had been a constant war between survival and self-destruction. The Prince of Darkness was gone, but the debate over his legacy was only just beginning. Ozzy Osbourne's death in 2025 left fans around the world grieving, but also debating what exactly his legacy meant. On one hand, he was celebrated as the godfather of heavy metal, the voice that helped birth an entire genre with Black Sabbath. Without Ozzy, there would likely be no Metallica, no Slayer, no Iron Maiden. The sound of heavy metal as we know it was forged in the crucible of his voice and Tony Iommi's riffs. His solo career only reinforced his status, giving the world anthems like Crazy Train that remain rock staples to this day. But Ozzy's legacy was not only musical, it was also cultural. The Osbournes paved the way for modern celebrity reality television, making his family pioneers of a genre that would later dominate pop culture. His larger-than-life persona, often parodied but always unforgettable, ensured that his name would be recognized far beyond the world of rock music. And yet, controversy clung to him like a shadow. For critics, Ozzy symbolized everything dangerous about rock and roll, glorified drug abuse, violence, and shock tactics that went too far. Religious groups accused him of promoting Satanism, pointing to songs like Suicide Solution as evidence of moral corruption. Parents tried to ban his music, while headlines branded him a monster, even as fans worshipped him as a hero. This duality defined Ozzy's entire existence. He was both genius and train wreck, innovator and liability, father figure and public embarrassment. In death, as in life, Ozzy Osbourne forced the world to confront an uncomfortable truth, that sometimes the line between brilliance and madness is paper thin. In the end, Ozzy Osbourne's story was never just about music. It was about survival, messy, chaotic, and often ugly survival. He rose from the factories of Birmingham to shape the sound of heavy metal. He conquered the world as the Prince of Darkness, then exposed his broken humanity to millions through reality television. He fought addiction, scandal, and his own failing body, and somehow endured far longer than anyone expected. But his final years told a different story. They revealed not the indestructible icon of chaos, but the fragile man behind the myth. His death in 2025 left behind a fractured legacy. For some, he will always be a pioneer, a legend who gave voice to rebellion. For others, he will remain a symbol of excess gone too far, a cautionary tale about what happens when genius is consumed by darkness. So we ask you, how should Ozzy Osbourne be remembered? As a rock god or as a broken soul lost in his own chaos? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Faded Crowns, where we bring you the untold stories, the scandals, and the tragedies Hollywood doesn't want you to remember.